So we've arrived at number 5 of our trek through the 5 basic unity principles. In case, I'm sure you all remember, but just in case. Number 1, there's one presence and one power in the universe, God the good. Remember that's it, period. There's no, well, what about, no. End of story. Number 2, there's a divine spark within each of us. And so our purpose here in life is to express more and more of that divine spark that is true for every person. Number 3 is we create our experience through our thoughts and our actions. And so as we continue to move our thoughts and actions more in alignment with the truth of knowing who we are, our life experiences continue to improve. And if you remember last week, I said the first 3 are kind of like, they're not kind of like, they are the line in the sand type principles. And then 4 and 5 are the how-to portion. It's kind of like the first ones are the part of the recipe where it just says, 2 cups sugar, 2 cups flour. And then the second 2 are the tells you how to put it all together part. So number 4 is through prayer, we change our lives. And that's part of how we become more expressing our divine spark. And number 5 is simply knowing these truths is not enough. I have to put it into action in my life. This is the just do it portion of the principles. The action step. Because if we know how, I know how to do a lot of things in theory. Maybe you've seen it, you've read a book about how to do something, or you've watched a movie or a documentary. So in theory, you sort of know how, right? But you have to actually do it. So when Charles and Myrtle Fillmore started teaching over 100 years ago, they didn't say, do it because I said so. They expected their students to practice. And they expected their students to apply the teachings to their lives, and they expected outcomes. Because it was true in their lives, and they said it continued to see these principles be true, result in good outcomes in other people's lives. So, why would you expect anything different from anyone else? In Mark 4, there's a story. It's a cool story. I like this story. So, if you notice, a lot of the stories starts with Jesus and the disciples doing their thing, and then they go off somewhere. That's kind of like how a lot of the stories start. So anyway, in Mark 4, they'd been doing the teaching and the healing and all that stuff, and evening has come, and so then they get in a boat and go across to the other side, which actually happens numerous times as well. And so off they go. There's several boats. A storm comes up. Jesus is taking a nap in the back of the boat. And, he's tired. He deserves a nap, right? But those darn disciples can't lay well enough of those. There's a storm. They're scared. They're like, hey, teacher, teacher, teacher. We've all probably been there, right? Teacher, teacher, teacher. Aren't you worried we're going to perish? And he says, according to this particular version of the Bible, because nobody was there with a video camera. Anyway, he says, well, first of all, he gets up, says to the storm, peace, be still. And then he says to the disciples, this is the funny part, why are you afraid? Have you still no faith? And he gives them a hard time. And so then, of course, the disciples are like, oh my gosh, who is this that the wind and the seas obey? And they totally missed the point. The point was not that Jesus stilled the storm. The point was, is Jesus was like, well, why didn't you do it? That's the point, I think. I was taking a nap. Why didn't you do it? Because they've been following him around and learning from him, and they've been doing this, and they were supposed to be the guys or gals who were learning these things, but they decided to let fear take over instead of knowing the truth, that they were safe, that they were cared for. Now, no one said it's easy, but just as with anything, you just keep moving in the direction you desire. So, some of you know this weekend has been the state games for Special Olympics, and some of us volunteered there yesterday, and Mary Ellen has been participating in the basketball tournament. Her team won this morning. Yay, Anchorage Grizzlies. And I get a little emotional because, you know, this is our second season with Special Olympics here, and I go to most of the practices, and these kids, they're not kids, these athletes, they work hard. They practice hard. They give it their all, and they keep trying, and they pick up, and they help each other, and it's beautiful. And they have fun, which is awesome too. But you know, the Special Olympics oaths that they say at the end of each practice. Let me win. But if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. And I think that that's a good motto for all of us. Because I think too much we get caught up in thinking that we need to do it right the first time. And if we don't, then we give up. But if we can take an example from these Special Olympics athletes, let me win. Let me get it right. Yeah, of course. But if I can't, let me do my best. And doing your personal best is the focus of what Special Olympics is about. And I think that that should be what the focus for all of us should be about. Because I have no control over whether or not someone else has entered into this race who can run faster than I can. But I can, gosh darn it, practice my butt off so I can run my fastest. And that's all I really can do. So it's not about competing with other people so much as doing my best. And what if we applied that to all aspects of our life, especially our spiritual practice? It's not about whether or not so-and-so has managed to achieve enlightenment according to them, whatever that means. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. What matters is that I know that I am walking the path that makes sense to me. And I'm walking the path that continues to move me forward and makes me continue to feel like I'm making the progress that's important to me. So, very prolific and popular writer Eric Butterworth, Unity writer Eric Butterworth, wrote, "We are told to pray without ceasing. And it can be said that the reason we have problems is that we stop practicing the presence of God." So you see, the practice of the presence of God is not just a nice thing to do for which you get brownie points. It is something you do for survival. The sooner you realize this, the sooner you begin to experience that life is more abundant than Jesus promised. So when we move past expecting a certain brownie point, a certain reward, a certain prize or whatever, and realize that it's the practice of having an excellent life, that's why we engage in spiritual practice. And that's why our athletes in Special Olympics practice. It's not about a particular game or a particular tournament. It's actually about a lifetime of health. That's the main focus. So what does it look like to walk the talk and practice what we preach? Because inauthenticity is one of those things that probably drives most of us a little batty, right? So we're trying to live an authentic life. And so let's look at those principles again. So what does it mean to live the authentic life? Well, with one presence, one power, that means that knowing this truly in you, that means everywhere you are is a holy place. And moving into that divine spark part, that means treating every person we see, including the one in the mirror, as if they have a divine spark. Remembering that they do. Even when they're doing teacher, 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 teacher. Even when they're, driving like a total maniac on the highway or whatever, they still have the divine spark. And that doesn't mean that there's not consequences for actions. There are. But we still can know the truth of who they are. And if we know that truth, that there is no separateness, if we stop living in separateness, then we can be way, way more blessed. Because we can stop putting all of our energy in protecting ourselves from something that we are. And so applying the fifth principle, do it, to the third principle, I create my life, which means we have to pay attention to our thoughts and our words that we use and the attitudes that we go about life with. And that doesn't mean that we don't have days or moments where we're not particularly Christ-like. And maybe it's just me. But I have moments where I might not be patient or kind. But I get to remember that that's a moment, and I get to bring myself back. I get to come back. Continue to refocus on the truth. Refocus on love. And that's just the practice. Okay, I didn't do my best. I didn't win on that one. Let me be brave in the attempt. Let me come back. Let me have the difficult conversation. Let me engage. That's why we're doing nonviolent communication, because it's a tool for us to practice living the truth of knowing that we're all holy. And if we do that, then we kind of have to be nice to each other. I'm just saying. And then putting into action principle 4, the prayer, as we talked about last week, you have to take the time. I can't say that having an active prayer life will solve all your problems instantly, because they won't. And I can't tell you that it will instantaneously heal whatever ails you, because that's not how the body works. But I can say that it is the best prescription that anyone can give you, because with consistent application, it does make a difference. Consistent application. There's that. So we talked last week about a couple strategies, either taking 5 times a day, like our Muslim friends, to refocus on our prayer practice, taking a moment or two to read a prayer, read a daily word, say the Lord's Prayer, or whatever works for you, 5 times a day. Or to tithe 1% of your day to prayer and meditation, 1% being 15 minutes. Isn't that convenient? It's just under 15 minutes, but we're going to go with 15 minutes. So instead of spending that time every day to do that, it's worth it. This is the main tool to change your life. So that's it. We're going to keep talking about tools, and we're going to start the 12 powers really soon, and that's super exciting. We're going to have a great time with the 12 powers. And all these things are more tools, strategies, perspectives, helpful reminders, because we all forget sometimes some of these things. And part of it, of course, is being together and having these friends to walk the journey with us, because we help each other remember to get back on track, stay focused on the truth and knowing the truth, and talking over the things that bug us about the world, and having our friends help us see another light to it. But this is all there is to know. If we can remember and stay focused on the truth that there's one presence and one power, that means there is no evil. There's people who make bad decisions. There's not evil people. There's people who make bad decisions or unhelpful decisions. I get to create the experience and the filter that I see the world through. I'm still having a great time reading that book about optimism and all the science behind it. It's that simple. We get to choose the glasses we see the world through. I say choose good ones. I don't think that's a difficult thing. You know, one of the main tools to put all of this into action in our life is through using our prayer and meditation practices, which include using our affirmations and denials and all the other things that we've talked about. And we have to just keep walking. We don't get where we want to go by deciding we did it once and we're just going to sit here in the parking lot. That's just not how we get where we want to go. We have to actually turn the car on, start driving, and keep going. That's how it works. So the ball's in your court now. Because the world needs more of us. The world needs more of us who believe in the power of connecting and loving. More of us who wish to see the beloved in every encounter. More of us who stand up with those of us who are not strong enough to stand on their own yet. So I'm taking a stand. Because when I see what's going on in the world, sometimes it's a little scary. So I've taken a stand. Because I believe that we are all connected and meant for greatness. And I'm taking a stand because it's too easy to look around and see misunderstanding and meanness and think that's the truth. But I know in my heart that our default as humans is compassion. Spiritual living the spiritual life, means taking a stand for peace, for love, for understanding and acceptance and inclusion. So I'm taking a stand, and I want to recruit all of you to take a stand with me, to take a stand for peace and for love, for understanding and acceptance and inclusion and more. I am part of the movement that is steering our focus as the world, as a community, towards love. Won't you join me?